and welcome to episode 16 of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors, and I am your host, Alba Arango. Today's episode is probably going to be the longest episode I will ever record because the topic is probably the most important topic of all. I am going to be talking about self-publishing versus traditional publishing in 2025 and the pros and cons of each. So if you are a first-time author and you're just now trying to figure out which path you want to go through, or if you're a traditionally published author and you're thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe with this next set, I'll try the self-publishing route. Or if you're a self-published author and you're like, hey, you know what? I've got this really cool book coming out. Maybe I'll try finding a traditional publisher. Whatever your case is, listen to these pros and cons in 2025 because they might be different than when you started your writing journey. So sit back, relax, and let's talk publishing. Alrighty then. So because today's topic is going to be so important, I'm going to break it down to more than just my usual 2 parts. Today's episode will be in multiple parts, and I've kind of broken them down by theme. So for this first part, I want to talk about cost. And I don't just mean money, I also mean time. And yes, I know time is money, yar. But what I'm going to do for the purpose of this is I'm going to break up time and money into 2 different topics. So first we're going to talk about cost as in money, and then we'll talk about cost as in time. So let's get to it because money is important in this day and age in our current economy. Money is an important topic. So how much does it cost to publish your book? So let's start with traditional publishing. So the pros of traditional publishing in regards to money is that it costs you nothing. That's part of the publisher's responsibility. They pay to publish your book. And this is definitely going to be a warning to you, if you have a publisher that you're looking into and they want you to pay for some of the upcuts, like an editor or something like that, no. That is their responsibility. If they're asking you to do that, then this is not a traditional publisher. They are more likely a vanity press, and that is a very different thing. So do your research. Make sure the publisher you are going through is one that isn't going to charge you for any part of the publishing process. And a double pro for this, not only is it not going to cost you money, but many publishers actually offer an advance. So you actually get money up front of your book being published. Now, having said that, if you are unfamiliar with an advance is not just money they're giving you. It's an advance against the royalties you're making from the books. So, for example, let's say they give you a $5,000 advance. That means you will collect $0 royalty until you have earned out that $5,000. So if you make, say, $1 per every book that is sold, until you have sold your 5,000 books, you aren't going to make any more money. Then once you sell that 5,001 book, now you're going to start making additional royalties. So that's kind of how that works, but none of that costs you any money. So all of that is definitely a pro for the traditional. Now, a con for the traditional, as far as money goes, is to get that contract with that publisher, you might have to shell out some money to get there. So many agents today, in order to get an agent, you do have to send them a query and start your query. We call them the query trenches, like literally in there querying, doing the research, finding all of these. But most agents now receive queries mostly through Query Tracker. And Query Tracker is free to use, but the premium is actually well worth the money because you get more features with the premium than you do with the free version, and it's only $25 a year. So the hope, of course, is that you will find an agent within a year, so you will only have to shell out that original $25 for the premium version of Query Tracker. Now, in addition to that, there are other expenses you might want to consider if you are thinking of going the traditional route. And one of them is to actually get a membership to Publishers Marketplace. Publishers Marketplace, they are the ones that keep track of all the publishing deals that are happening like right now. So say you are looking into agents and you want to see if this particular agent has sold anything in the genre you are writing in, you could go to Publishers Marketplace and find that out. The caveat is you actually have to pay for the subscription, and the subscription is about $25 a month. So that can add up, especially if you're looking at it might take you a year to find an agent and you're doing this. However, it is so well worth it, in my opinion. Because let's say you're researching this agent. Oh, they look so good on paper. I mean, they look like they totally represent your genre. They look like they totally be it. And then you do kind of a search on Publishers Marketplace and you see that agent hasn't actually sold a book in 4 years. So they haven't had a deal in 4 years. So you're putting a lot of faith in an agent that maybe isn't as active as you would like them to be for your book. So that might be a place where you have to spend some money up front. There's also pitching agents at writers' conferences. And I know like Writers Digest, they have like a 1-day conference. They had one in Las Vegas here. They have them in LA, and they always have agents there that you can pitch to. And you do have to pay for the conference, which is usually like $99. Plus you have to pay to pitch to the agents, which is like $29. Others writers conference, like the Las Vegas Writers Conference here in Vegas, you actually get to pitch to the agents for free if you go to the conference. But the conference is like, $400 or $500, but you get to learn a lot of stuff besides that. You guys already know that I am totally pro writers conferences, but that would be yet another expense that you might have to have in order to get to that publishing contract. So things to consider. Now, on the other side of this, for self-publishing, the pros for self-publishing, as far as money goes, is not a whole lot, in the sense that, well, you might save money because you don't need to do Query Tracker and you don't need to have the subscription to Publishers Marketplace because you're not going to be doing traditional publishing, so you don't need those things. But the con side of this is that you then, as the publisher, pay for everything. So you're talking about the cover design, you have to pay for it, whereas in a traditional, they pay for it. Yes, you can get one on Fiverr. Let me just talk about that really quickly. I've had several authors that I know that are like, oh yeah, I just did it through Fiverr. And let me just give you a couple warnings about doing this on Fiverr. Make sure you own the copyright to the images that are on there. If you're just paying some guy on Fiverr $20 to make you a cover and they give you this super cool cover and you're like, oh man, I love this cover, it's super cool, and you don't own the copyright for the images that they use, you could be sued, and it is you being sued. You are the publisher. So you make sure that you own the copyright for those images. So places like Shutterstock, you can actually buy the right to use their images for book covers. So that might be something to look into. You get the images from Shutterstock and send them to your cover designer on Fiverr and have them do it. Or you take the pictures yourself. Go out at sunrise, get some pretty cool sunrise pictures and send those images to your cover designer on Fiverr. Now, you can also do pre-made covers. And if you're doing romance and you're just planning on publishing on Kindle, which you will make a fortune, well, I can't guarantee you'll make a fortune, but romance is super hot on Kindle. You can just get a pre-made cover and they're pretty cheap. They're unique. I mean, as far as they are unique to romance and they're pre-made. Like all they do is they have this, you get to choose from the cool covers that they have. And then they put in your information, your title, your name, and then boom, there you go. You have a cover and that can cost you maybe $50. Or you can do the total customizable one, which means it's completely unique to you. You actually hire a cover designer to design a book specifically for your book, which is, of course, the coolest thing to do, but it's also going to be the most expensive. So cover designers can run you anywhere from, $300 or $400 to up to $1,000. So just kind of keep all of those costs in mind as far as your cover goes. Now, in addition to the cover, you also have to pay for an editor because you want your book to be as close in quality to a traditional published as you can make it. And so an editor would be important. Now, I know that can be an incredible cost, and a lot of people are like, it's a little bit out of my league. If you're going to go the Grammarly route, make sure you at least pay for the premium version. What I don't like about things like Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid is, yes, they are great about grammar and they are great about that, but they are not going to be telling you if you are going back and forth between passive and active voice, which is a quality issue. I mean, you're looking at amateur writing and it's not going to be detected for things like Grammarly. So in my opinion, having at least a copy editor is something you will probably want to invest in for your book, and they can be pricey. In addition to things like that, you also have to pay for things like the ISBN. And I'm also going to give you a warning on the ISBN. If you are going to use the Amazon, because they give you one for free. If you publish on Amazon, you can just get the free Amazon one and cost nothing. The problem with that is then you cannot publish that anywhere else except through Amazon. So if you wanted to take your book to, say, Draft to Digital or Ingram Spark, you cannot, because Amazon has control of that ISBN because you did it for free. Now you can get your own ISBN, which is what I would probably recommend you do, but they can be pricey. You can only buy it through Bowker, and one ISBN is $125, and you need one for each version of your book. So if you do an ebook and a paperback, that's 2 ISBNs that you need. Now, Bowker does sell in bulk, and they're way cheaper. So, for example, one ISBN is $125, but 10 are $295. So that's like a huge discount. And if you know you're going to be publishing on both, ebook and paperback, and maybe even hardcover, then that's 3 ISBNs you need. It might just be in your best interest to buy them straight from Bowker and get them in a slight bundle. All right. So far, you're kind of seeing how it is as far as money goes, but let's talk about what is it going to cost you in time. So if we go through a traditional publisher, the pros of a traditional publisher and time aren't many. When it comes to time, this is going to be one where for a traditional publisher, the cons are going to definitely outweigh the pros. The only pro might be that because their editors are kind of pressed for time as far as they've got multiple books that they're trying to edit, they might try to push out your edits kind of quicker. So you might have that advantage as far as traditional publishing goes, but the cons are definitely the better weight here on traditional. For the cons, first you have to think about the amount of time it's going to take you to get that publishing contract. All the time it's going to take you to research your agents, to query the agents. Then once you get the agents, for the agent to then, pitch your book to publishers until they finally get you a publisher, and then finally you get a contract. And then once you get the contract, it could easily be 1 to 2 years before your book is in print. So you're talking way down the road. If you're looking at traditional publishing, it can't be something that you want done like by Christmas. That is not going to happen with the traditional publishing route. So keep that in mind. Time is definitely a con for traditional publishing. Which brings us to self-publishing, and this is going to be your big pro in self-publishing, is that everything is in your time. You decide when everything happens. So if you want to have the publishing date be on your birthday, you can make it on your birthday. The only things you might have to wait a little bit for is your cover designer to get you back their finished cover, your editor to get you back your edits, and things like, getting your Library of Congress number. I mean, that never takes very long. I think the most I've ever waited for my Library of Congress number is like maybe 4 days. But you might have to do that. And the only other thing I would say that might give you a little bit of time that you will need is I would definitely order an author proof before you hit that publish button. Like take a look at the physical copy before you give the okay to make that available. Because if you've made some formatting errors, because again, you're the one doing all the work, so you're doing the formatting. If you've made some formatting errors, then you want to see it before you actually put that book out on the market. Okay, we got lots more to do. For the next part, I want to talk about rights and control. And I kind of lumped them together. So we'll be talking about both the pros and cons of traditional versus self-publishing for rights and control. So let's get to traditional publishing first. What are some pros in going through a traditional publisher as far as rights and control go? Well, first of all, they do have lawyers that work for them. So if any issue were to come up, say you had some potential copyright infringement issues, you talk about, Disney, or you talked about Harry Potter, they would know if the way you did it is acceptable in copyright laws or not. So that's kind of a pro of having a traditional publisher. But probably the biggest pro with a traditional publisher is that they have industry knowledge. They know if the title you have is going to work in your genre or not. And if it's not going to work, they are going to change the title to one that they see as being marketable. Now, that is something that you, as just the everyday person, isn't really going to have that kind of insider knowledge. And so a traditional publisher, they're going to know that with both the cover, they're going to know that with the title, they're going to know what works and what doesn't work because they have seen through experience what works and what doesn't work. Things that you really probably don't have. And yeah, you could go to the bookstore and kind of look at what's working as far as, say, urban fantasy goes in YA, but what you don't see is what doesn't work. So like you aren't going to see the failed covers, the failed titles that has been kind of brushed under the rug or rebranded or whatever. You're not going to know that, but publishers will. So that insider knowledge is to your advantage when it comes to publishing because they know the market better than you. Now, the con side of this to traditionally publishing is that you, as the author, lose a lot of control of your book. So the book cover, that's not you. That's the publisher. They choose the cover. And then they show it to you and go, hey, this is the cover for your book. And you're going to be like, oh, that's so cool. And then if you're Stephen King, yeah, you can be like, nah, that's not going to work for me. But unless you are someone with the weight of Stephen King behind you, you're going to have to accept whatever they produce as the cover. And that's also true for your title. And that title might be really important to you. I mean, maybe it has some kind of significance with your parents or something, and you really want to keep that title. Well, hopefully you have a publisher that's got some empathy, and they're going to be like, okay, maybe we can make that work. But understand that ultimately they make the decision. If they're like, nope, it's not going to work. This is what the title is going to be. And you've agreed to this in your contract, which you probably would because you wanted that publishing contract, then you are going to go along with whatever cover and title that they want. That's just the way it's going to be. You also lose your rights to that book and to those characters for the most part. So you can't even really be like, well, I'll do, book one with them. And then if I don't like it and get out of the contract, then, I'm just going to go ahead and self-publish, books 2 and 3. You actually may not be able to do that. It has to be stipulated in your contract that you get the rights to your characters back at the termination of the contract. And publishers may not be willing to do that. So these are all things you have to consider if you are going to go the traditional route. If you really want to keep those characters and you want to keep the rights to them, that has to be stipulated in the contract. And that may affect whether or not you actually get a publishing contract. And of course, there is always the fact that, most authors are introverts and don't like dealing with other people. And if you go the traditional route, you have to deal with other people. You have to deal with your agent. You have to deal with the publishers, and you have to deal with, if they're going to send you on book tours and stuff, you have to deal with other people. It's one of those things you kind of may have to do, just letting you know ahead of time. Okay. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you decide to self-publish, the pros of self-publishing in this way is that you have control of your book. Everything. You control the cover, you control the title, you control when it's released, you control all of that. So you keep control of it. Now, I will tell you, the publishing industry is a little bit different now than it was, say, 12 years ago. When I self-published my first book in 2013, there was a reason why I chose self-publishing. This was kind of a strange time. The self-publishing industry was just starting to become more recognizable. I mean, I think they still weren't validated by the New York Times bestseller list or anything like that, but it was starting to pick up steam and become more accredited as far as people actually considering it a valid form of publishing. And what made me decide to self-publish was this. I read a blog from my favorite author, who is Rick Riordan. He writes children's books. He wrote the Percy Jackson series. And at the time, he was in the process of publishing another series called The Kane Chronicles. And in that series, the two main characters were a brother and sister, and they were mixed. I can't remember now if it's the dad was black and the mom was white. I think that's the way it goes. But the two characters, the boy, the brother, was black and the girl was white. And he published through his publisher. And when they published his book in the Netherlands, they whitewashed the black character and made him look white. And the author, Rick Riordan, threw a fit to his publisher, understandably. And his publisher was like, we have no control of the book cover that they do over there in our sister publishing company. So that's how it was. And it remained that cover for like the next 3 years until finally, I think in 2015, the Netherlands publisher republished it with the correct race of the boy on the cover. And I knew at the time that I read that blog article that I would lose my mind if they did that, because my main character was black. And if they whitewashed him on the cover, I would lose my mind. So I chose the self-publishing route because I wanted to have control of my covers. Now, that was 12 years ago. The publishing industry now is pretty different. They are actively looking for people of color to write, to represent. They're actively searching for that. So now is a different time. So if I was going to be starting over today, I might take a more serious look at traditional publishing just because, now it's a different place than it was 12 years ago. But that is one of the definite pros of self-publishing, is that you have control of your cover and your title. Now, the cons of it are everything is on you. Like everything is on you. So like what I mentioned before about how, traditional publishers, they have a team of lawyers and you have nothing. You got you. And maybe if you know a media lawyer, you might be able to talk to them about that. But everything is on you. Everything. Even like formatting the book, putting it in proper, are there too many spaces at the end of paragraphs for the Kindle? All of that is on you. And yes, you can hire a professional formatter, again, on you. But you have control of that. So you get to control that, which is kind of a pro, but it's also a con because it puts everything on your shoulders. And it's a lot. It's not a simple thing where you just push it into the computer and hit publish. It's a lot that you need to make sure if you want your book to be industry standard quality, there's a lot of things you have to do. And it is, again, all on you. All right. Next topic. Oh, but wait, before we get to the rest of the episode, it's time for the crazy law / writing prompt. If you're new to the show, every week I give you a writing prompt in the way of an actual law. I like to call it a crazy law, but something that was once upon a time a real law in history. And the challenge is for you to write a story about that law. And it could be why you think that, law could have been created, or a story involving the actual law itself or trying to enforce it. So here we go. This week's crazy law is this. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it is against the law to shave while driving an automobile. Oh, I can think of so many fun stories for that. But there you go. That's your writing challenge for the week. All right, let's get to the rest of the episode. For my next topic, I want to talk about visibility and bookstores. And here's one where if you decide to go through a traditional publisher, there are definitely a lot of pros in their corner on this topic. So if you are going traditionally published, a lot of the bigger bookstores like Barnes & Noble, like Walmart and Target, a lot of times they only work with traditional publishers. They have, especially if you're looking at like Target and Walmart, they have very limited shelf space. So they are looking for books that they are pretty heavily counting on are going to be top sellers. Now, the other part of this is that bookstores like Barnes & Noble, publishers actually pay money for your book to be on their shelves. You have books like Barnes & Noble, they're going to make money off of getting traditional publishers to put their books in their bookstore, as opposed to self-publishers. A lot of the bookstores that will accept self-publishers oftentimes do it on consignment. So there's actually no guarantee that those books will sell and that they will make any money by having that very valuable shelf space dedicated to self-publishers. So they will tend to go with traditional publishers. So that is definitely an advantage if you are going through a traditional publisher, is actually having your books seen in bookstores. Now, the cons of having to go through a traditional publisher is that your books have what we call a shelf life, meaning if they don't sell, the bookstore is not going to carry their books anymore. So you really have whatever time limit your publisher is giving to get your books on those shelves to sell. And if they don't sell, that publisher isn't going to spend the money to keep putting your books on those bookshelves. Remember, publishers pay to have your book on those bookshelves. So if your books aren't selling, then they're done. And remember, next month, they have new books that they want to get out. So they might just turn their attention to the next month's authors. Your books are pulled and their books are replacing them. So you literally have to do well when your books hit those bookshelves for your publisher to keep your books on those bookshelves. Now, if you decide to go the self-publishing route, the pros of having your book self-published and visibility in bookstores is the shelf life issue. If you get your book into a bookstore, then the chances are it's going to stay there, and it's going to stay there until they either sell it, and then once they sell it, they might ask for it again. Because if you as a self-publisher can get your book into a bookstore, it's because that bookstore is willing to work with you as an author. And you'd be surprised, especially your local bookstores, really rooting for you. So a lot of even Barnes and Nobles will carry local author books and have them on their bookshelves, and they are actively promoting local authors. So you can, in that way, that is a pro for you, where your traditional publisher will pull the books from their shelves. The self-publishers might be able to keep them in the bookstores for longer periods of time. Now, of course, the cons to this are pretty great because some bookstores will absolutely just not carry your books. And because they're self-published, there's nothing you can do. You can't lean on your publisher because you are the publisher. So in that case, you are going to still be fighting that stigma that self-publishing is not a valid publishing, which you absolutely are. But again, you have a lot of bookstores that kind of still push back on carrying self-published books. All right, that kind of actually takes me to my next topic, which is earning potential. Now, if you're going through the traditional route and you get a publication deal with a traditional publisher, the absolute pro in this is that you most likely will get an advance. And that is money that even if your books don't sell, you don't have to give that money back. So if they pay you $5,000 in advance and you literally do not sell 5,000 books, you still get to keep all that money. Now, that may affect any future publishing deals with them, but for that book that you wrote with that publisher that you have a contract with, you do not have to pay your advance back, and you get that money up front. So that is a definite advantage. Now, the cons of going through a traditional publisher is that you only earn in royalties anywhere from 10 to 15% of the list price. So if you have, your paperback is $9.99, you're only going to be making about maybe 10% of that. So like $1. And that is not very much, especially if you've only got a month, because after a month, the publisher is going to be promoting a different book and they're going to pull your books from the shelves. You don't have a lot of time to make a lot of sales and earn back that advance. And any royalties you make past that advance, you're only going to be making 10 to 15%. And of course, if this is your first contract, you're definitely going to be at the 10%. All right, unless your book is such a hot topic that they really think you're going to do it and there's an auction for your book, which would be amazing. But there you go. That is a con for that. Now, on the self-publishing front, the pros of self-publishing is you make way more money for each book that you sell. And you're talking with Amazon, it's 60%. Used to be 70. Now it's 60% or 35%, depending on how much you price your book for and the marketplace. But either way, it's substantially more than you would get through traditional publishing. And if your publishing contract didn't get you in advance, then this is a way better deal. You're making way more money. Now, the cons, of course, of this are you've got to sell the book. And that is not as easy to do because some bookstores won't carry your book. So you are relying on online sales, on book sales, on in-person sales. And that's a lot of work on you. Way more than if the traditional publisher gets it to all the Barnes and Nobles across the country. So you've got to weigh the pros and cons of this when it comes to earning. Yes, you make more money, but are you getting the exposure? And it's all on you to get that exposure. So you've got to do the work to sell your books. Which brings me to my last and final topic, and that is one that I think many authors don't know going in, and that is marketing. If you go through a traditional publisher, how much marketing they are going to do depends entirely on that particular publisher. Some publishers, in fact, especially the bigger houses and even the medium houses, they have in-house publicists, and those publicists are going to handle things like social media. They're going to handle, news releases. They're going to handle all of that for you. It's all part of the package of going through a traditional publisher. You don't pay for any of that. They are going to get the editorial reviews. They're going to get the ARC reviewers. They're going to get through Goodreads and do the Goodreads giveaways. They're paying for all of that because that is part of the traditional publishing thing. They pay for all of that, which is amazing and a huge pro because they're paying for all of that. They're going to promote you on their website, all of that. However, the cons to this is that there is a time limit. Again, next month, they have a different author that their publicist is going to promote them. Their editorial reviews are going to go for them. Everything is going to go through the new author that's getting published next month, and you are yesterday's news. So yes, that's great. They're going to do all that marketing for you initially, maybe. Not all publishers do that. Smaller presses and a lot of the medium presses, they just do not have the budget. So if you are a new author, a debut author with a debut novel, even the big publishers are not really going to have the marketing dollars to spend on you. If, James Patterson's got a new book coming out, where are they going to put their money? Are they going to put it funding him where they know it's going to be a huge sell? They're going to, really market that, or they can market you. And so they've got to decide where their marketing dollars are going to go. So if you're lucky, you will get the publicist and you will get the ARC reviews and you'll get the editorial reviews and maybe even a Goodreads giveaway and an Amazon ad. That's a maybe not. Hopefully it is though. Hopefully they're going to at least put their money and their faith behind you. I mean, they're taking you on, they're putting this money investment in you. So hopefully they're going to do all of that. The con of all of this is that you have a time limit because next month it will be someone else. So that means at that point, all the marketing falls to you. And that's it. That's how it goes. From this point on, you have to do all the marketing. You have to do the social media. You have to go after more reviewers. You have to go and pay for Amazon ads. You got to do all of that on your own. So you might get them for about a month. And then after that, it is all on you. So that brings me to self-publishing. What are the pros of self-publishing? The pros are you can do all of it on your own. You're going to have to do it with a traditional publisher anyways, maybe not for a month, but you are going to have to do it. So the pros of self-publishing is that you do it from the get-go. That means even before your book comes out, you're already marketing. You're already doing all the things you need to do. You're getting your ARC reviews. You're doing Amazon ads. You're doing all of that. You're paying for it, which is, of course, the con to this is that you've got to come up with the money for all of that, but you can do it. It's all something that is within your reach. Now, you can get a publicist as well. They are pricey, but if you've got the money, a publicist will absolutely help get all your book. They're going to write the newspaper releases. They're going to do all of that stuff for you, get your social media going, all of that. But you have the power to do all the marketing yourself because let me just tell you, you are going to have to do it at some point anyways, whether you go through a traditional or self, you do have to do the marketing yourself. And I will have a whole separate podcast just on marketing tips for both traditional and self-published authors since you both have to do it, but not now. Now I'm actually done with this incredibly long podcast. I don't even know how long this took. I do hope you enjoyed it. If so, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe. I put out a new episode each week, every Wednesday, and this book writing tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors. I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.